How authoritarian regimes control people. Imagine a world where every move you make is being watched, every word you say is being recorded, and every thought you have can make you a target. It's not science fiction. It's the grim reality countless people have lived under authoritarian regimes. This video dives into the disturbing tactics used by such regimes to maintain power and control, drawing lessons from history that remain relevant today. It's a wake-up call for activists and advocates for freedom, reminding us to stay vigilant in protecting our basic rights. This is more than just a history lesson. It's a roadmap of warning signs to identify and resist authoritarianism today. One of the most chilling tools authoritarian regimes use is surveillance. When people know they are being watched, their behavior changes. They become compliant, overly cautious, and increasingly isolated. This fear of constant observation makes powerful resistance nearly impossible. In Nazi Germany, the Gestapo operated as the regime's all-seeing eye. They cultivated networks of informants who reported on neighbors, co-workers, even family members. It wasn't just what you said openly. Your private life, casual conversations, and even facial expressions could make you a target. Paranoia thrived, breaking down trust within communities. Fast forward to today, and modern surveillance has entered a new phase. China's government employs advanced digital monitoring systems that track citizens in every conceivable way. Facial recognition cameras, internet activity logs, and even biometric data collection ensure the government has total oversight. In some cities, it's impossible to walk through a public square without being recorded multiple times. The psychological toll is heavy. Surveillance creates a society where people silence themselves not out of guilt, but out of fear. Loyalty to the state becomes performative, and dissent begins to die before it's born. When the fear of being watched is normalized, the foundation for freedom starts to crumble. This brings us to an unsettling question. How much surveillance is too much? Activists must advocate for transparency and regulation before creeping technologies invade the democratic fabric of our societies. While surveillance manipulates behavior, controlling the media manipulates the truth. In authoritarian regimes, the state wields total power over information. It's not just news outlets. No book, film, song, or piece of art escapes censorship. The purpose? To craft a narrative that portrays the regime as infallible and suppresses dissenting voices. During Nazi Germany, propaganda became an art form weaponized by Joseph Goebbels. Newspapers, movies, and even children's books pushed a singular vision of the perfect state. The regime fostered hatred toward minorities and glorified its own agenda, controlling not just information but minds. The USSR under Stalin went even further. Every publication and broadcast was state-sanctioned, transforming media into a mechanism for ideological indoctrination. Voices of opposition vanished, history was rewritten, heroes were erased, and a one-sided narrative blanketed the population. Without access to truth, resisting the regime became almost impossible. Modern-day China provides a contemporary blueprint. With a vast internet censorship system, the government controls what over 1 billion people can see. Platforms like WeChat and Weibo are closely monitored, and any content critical of the state is quickly deleted, often accompanied by arrests. The absence of free press means that ordinary citizens have little access to alternative viewpoints. The danger here is clear. Control the information, and you control perception. In today's world, activists must fight to preserve press freedom, combat disinformation, and provide avenues for the truth to reach those who need it most. Surveillance watches you, media controls what you know, but the police state is where authoritarianism turns truly terrifying. In authoritarian regimes, law enforcement is weaponized to not uphold justice, but to spread fear and quash dissent. The police become an extension of the regime, agents of oppression rather than protectors of the people. Take Nazi Germany's infamous Gestapo as a prime example. The secret police infiltrated every layer of society, arresting those who resisted or didn't fit the regime's ideal. People disappeared overnight, their families left to wonder what their crime had been. The chilling efficiency of the Gestapo ensured people rarely spoke out, even among trusted friends. The Soviet Union under Stalin took this tactic to devastating extremes. During the purges of the 1930s, millions were arbitrarily arrested, tortured, and executed on fabricated charges. The KGB, the USSR's intelligence and secret police agency, ensured a climate of terror. People followed orders not out of loyalty, but to avoid becoming the next victim of the regime. In China today, political dissenters and marginalized groups face a similarly oppressive reality. Uyghur Muslims, for instance, are detained in large numbers in so-called re-education camps, where reports of abuse abound. Protests are swiftly crushed, and those who speak out are labeled traitors or criminals, silencing not just the dissenters but also those who might follow in their footsteps. The core tactic here is fear. People remain obedient not because they agree with the regime but because they fear the consequences of dissent. This fear erodes the will to organize and resist. Activists must therefore fight to expose and oppose these abuses wherever they occur. Without resistance, fear becomes the law. Surveillance watches people. Media lies to them. Police crush their spirit. But how do authoritarian powers control those who might try to resist anyway? They hit them where it hurts most, their livelihood. Economic coercion is one of the most insidious forms of control, as it forces compliance through fear of deprivation. People can be stripped of jobs, access to services, or even the ability to provide for their families if they don't toe the line. In Nazi Germany, this tactic was wielded against Jewish communities through anti-Semitic laws that barred them from certain jobs, restricted their property rights, and effectively reduced them to second-class citizens. Compliance with the regime was often the only viable way to hold on to financial stability. Stalin-era USSR also weaponized the economy against dissenters. Critics of the Soviet Union found themselves blacklisted, their families denied basic resources like food and education. Entire groups were starved into submission through devastating policies like forced collectivization, leaving minimal room for uprising. In modern-day China, economic coercion has become alarmingly sophisticated. The social credit system links financial privileges, loans, jobs, and even travel to a citizen's loyalty and obedience to the state. A bad score can mean restricted opportunities, all because of a social media post or attendance at a protest. Ordinary people learn quickly that the state controls not only their wealth, but also their future. Economic coercion is especially dangerous because it preys on vulnerability. Stripping people of their ability to live with dignity cuts off resistance at its root. Activists must push back against these methods, advocating for policies and structures that protect economic independence and prevent governments from using livelihoods as leverage. Across these tools, surveillance, media control, police states, and economic coercion, a chilling pattern emerges. Authoritarian regimes thrive on fear, falsehoods, and dependence. These controls create a society where dissent feels impossible, obedience becomes survival, and freedom is lost. But this is not just history. Elements of authoritarianism exist today in democratic societies. Widespread surveillance technologies go unchecked. Media disinformation polarizes nations. Fear-based overreach by law enforcement sparks outrage. Economic tools like restricting access to resources or loans are used to silence critics. The seeds of control are already present. Activists have a vital role to play. First, recognize the warning signs, whether it's invasive surveillance laws, attacks on press freedom, or government overreach. Second, educate others about these dangers. Knowledge is power, and spreading awareness is the first step toward resistance. Finally, take action. Support watchdog organizations, stand with communities under threat, and demand accountability from those in power. History has shown us time and again that authoritarian regimes don't emerge overnight. They rise because no one stops them when they begin. Surveillance becomes normalized. Propaganda goes unchallenged. Fear takes hold as society turns a blind eye. But the story can be different. By recognizing and resisting these tactics, we can be the safeguard that ensures freedom survives. Activists must stand at the forefront of this fight, empowered by the knowledge of yesterday's mistakes and determined to prevent them from repeating. Because authoritarianism doesn't need your belief to succeed, it only needs your silence. Remember to like and subscribe to get notifications when more thought-provoking content drops. And as always, eat the rich.